who decided what breakfast you will have today? It could be usually your spouse. And when I ask this in the classroom, when I talk to youngsters, one of the things that come back is saying that, sir, my warden decides it, right? So usually who decide what you have for breakfast is a very, very decentralized governance. But however, when all of us, when we wanted our first COVID vaccine or the second COVID vaccine, who decided when we'll get the vaccine? It was the government, right? So always remember, we can always think that we'll privatize our lives and say that no matter if the water is not good enough, I'll buy a water tanker. If the power is not good enough, I'll put a UPS. I'll put a solar panel on my rooftop and generate the power. But whenever there is scarcity of resources, the government will always come in, and we are all dependent on government. Share something more that how we look at political change. We are in the business of creating future political leaders, and our interest is that these principles of good governance across political parties, the established ones, the new ones, and also the upcoming ones, right? We have a vibrant democratic culture in our country, and the need to represent can always be fulfilled by newer and newer political alternatives. So what is it that we have been seeing, right? Who decided what breakfast you will have today? It could be usually your spouse. And when I ask this in the classroom, when I talk to youngsters, one of the things that come back is saying that, sir, my warden decides it, right? So usually who decide what you have for breakfast is a very, very decentralized governance. But however, when all of us, when we wanted our first COVID vaccine or the second COVID vaccine, who decided when we'll get the vaccine? It was the government, right? So always remember, we can always think that we'll privatize our lives and say that no matter if the water is not good enough, I'll buy a water tanker. If the power is not good enough, I'll put a UPS. I'll put a solar panel on my rooftop and generate the power. But whenever there is scarcity of resources, the government will always come in, and we are all dependent on government. Be it clean air, be it law and order, it is always important that we remember that we can't isolate ourselves, no matter how rich or poor we are, from the overall context of the society that we live in. So please remember that you need to have your antenna, your connections, your ways of engaging with the political establishment always active. So one other thing is to look at how are these fields getting crystallized as we speak. Over the last 15 years, we have seen a huge growth in how politics also has evolved in India. We have very, very formal roles today of what will politicians do when they are popped a question. There are earlier days when a politician would have kind of been caught by a journalist and asked a very provocative question, and the politician would have also probably spoken in the spur of the moment. Now, all politicians are trained not to answer at the spur of the moment. They have a political strategist who is constantly advising them on what issues to speak on and what issues to not speak on, based on a whole lot of data that's been gathered on what are the voters expecting from them. Second thing, no matter which issue you want to speak on, not all of us are intelligent enough or well ingrained into the dynamics of that. So there is a great emerging field of policy research that has emerged, where people will research for the dynamics of the pros and cons about each and every issue that is going to affect you. So we see that more and more politicians are today investing in a political strategist, in policy research associates, and also there are teams which run the parliamentary and legislative affairs of these MLAs. It's no longer about MLAs and MPs coming in Tata Sumos or one of those convoy of long vehicles and then they being seen as leaders. Today, leaders are far more sophisticated. They understand that they need to respond to various demands, and there is a structured way of doing this. Even political parties are getting a lot more smarter now. The parties are also managing the talent, the available pool of contestants that they can give to the voters in a very strategic manner. Today, there are parties who have deep leadership pipeline based on different contexts, circumstances, etc. They will even swap leaders at the last moment and say, for this particular constituency, we are going to change the contestant. And that's the reason you are seeing that many sitting MPs across party lines are not getting tickets. There are also the coalition compulsions where two or more parties are coming together, then they don't have a say on all the seats that put for vote. And hence, this party management becomes very crucial. And similarly, how a constituency is managed, how a political campaign is managed, what are the ways in which election managers need to respond to the Election Commission of India and various other authorities during elections. All of these are getting systematized, and this is a field of study we are seriously engaged in, and we train our students on all of these aspects. And so, if any of you are interested in the world of politics, we would be more than happy to talk to all of you. India is a land of vibrant democracy. In the bottom, you have various political parties that are available across the country. Some national parties, some state level parties, and some very, very regional parties. But one thing that's common about all of them is the set of institutions that you see on top. These are all youth-oriented organizations by these political parties. The political parties have realized that it's important that they talk to the youngsters very much soon rather than late. They want to listen to what youngsters feel about different issues. They want to get their opinion. They want to get them involved in the whole electoral process. So you see that the youth are very much desired by politicians, the political parties, and hence you need to step up and start engaging yourself with a party of your choice. And you need to explore, in case you don't have a default party by choice, then explore one. Maybe in the next election you can explore another. But start talking to your leaders, and that's very important. And unlike the generation before of your parents and uncles and aunts and everybody else, the way you consume news also has changed. Today, more and more youngsters consume the news using this device called as the mobile phone. Very rarely they are sitting and watching TV news or reading newspaper. Those are becoming extinct sources as far as political opinion is concerned. So a whole lot of experts are today required to make sure that a political message reaches to the right voter. And how do you get the attention of a youngster and give him a political choice, give him a political message? So a whole lot of these arenas are also emerging. And that's what we do with our students. Here you see on top, in less than 2 months, all our master's program students were trained to go and get a pulse of voters in Madhya Pradesh. This happened about 8 months ago when Madhya Pradesh went into elections under the leadership of my colleague Dr. Lenin Kumar, whom you see in front of a cobbler shop. He took the students to experience what is the choice that people are thinking, why are they thinking of that choice, and how have the schemes and the programs initiated by the government, have they really benefited people in the last mile or not, are to be best gauged by a psephology exercise like how our students have done. And not just this, we also explore our students through a framework, what we call Panchayat to Parliament. Here on the left is our students interacting with Shri Anna Hazare ji and understanding the political realities at a village level of what are the aspirations of people in a village. And on the right hand side, this February, our students had the opportunity meeting with our Union Finance Minister, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, and understand her priorities while preparing the budget, her constraints, and how does she see the politics of the nation in the coming decade. So this kind of holistic opportunities are available, and it's for all of us to kind of engage and see how you can understand the politics from the significant players and go forward from there. You see the girl in the waistcoat standing behind. She is getting prepared to ask a question. She is the one in the center frame here talking to women in remote Madhya Pradesh. And she is the one also talking to Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji and addressing her just few months apart. Right. So here is how we see a good political leader has to get multi-dimensional skill. It's not just about they being good with political science. Well, that's a good starting point. But you also need to understand how do you translate a political priority into a public policy solution. That's a secondary aspect. But most importantly, you should start looking at the definition of change, the ethical basis of change, understand the philosophy, psychology, and the legal dimensions of change so that you can craft a long lasting solution. We also what happened in terms of the electoral bonds recently. The government of the day thought that it had a solution to fix the political donation problem, but the Supreme Court disagreed after a few years through a public interest litigation. So, no matter you might be the government in power, but understanding law and the principles of law, you can't escape from it. Then, most importantly, you should look at the economics and statistics of the state, district, or the city that you are governing, or even the nation. It's one thing to make lofty promises, but do you have the resources to deliver the promises that you are making? And summating all of these are the skills of leadership and communication. How do you take the right decision that is taking all these constraints in mind and also communicate effectively to all your voters of the solution that you have come up with, and even if not, it's not an optimal solution for all, explaining to other stakeholders of the constraints that are holding you back to create an ideal solution and still say that this is a better solution than the context. I think these are the dynamics that we should all appreciate. And the youth of the nation have choices in politics as well, and not just in medicine or engineering as was seen 2 to 3 decades ago. You can look at political leadership journey as well as an option.